Leicester. How are you, Matt?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. It's a pleasure to have you on. Obviously, being a local lad, how does it feel playing for Leicester and now commentating on BBC Radio Leicester?
So, well, a lot of people don't know this, but I commentated for Radio Leicester back in about 2008, 2009. But at that time, and everyone was like, he's awful. Get him off the radio. He's absolutely shocking. And even though it hurt my feelings at the time, it was correct because I was drunk, I was on drugs, I was taking all sorts of drugs, and it was a really difficult moment in my life. And I was trying to do things like the radio with no preparation, getting in at 8 o'clock in the morning from the night before and then going to do a 3 o'clock game. I didn't take it seriously, and it was a big mistake that I made, and it was a real hard time in my life. So I've always wanted to come back and do it again. And then Ian Stringer, after they won the league, gave me that opportunity. So I was so thankful to him and BBC Radio Leicester for giving me a chance. Because when I first did it, they used to come to me for analysis, say a situation building on the pitch, and Ian Stringer was doing the commentary, and then something would happen, and then normally the summariser, which is me, says what they think, and I used to have nothing in my head to say. So because it's radio, it's good because no one could see you, but I used to do this to Ian Stringer. So I only used to say a few bits during the game. So in my mind, I always wanted to come back when I got myself right, because I always believed I would get through that tough period in my life. Once I got myself right, I would go back and do that job and make a better decisions and make a better job of it the second time round. And I think I've done that. So, yeah, being a local lad as well is really good for the radio. And then playing for your team, I've been at Leicester since I was 8 years old. So that's all I ever wanted to do, play football for the first team. So, once I got there, it was, it's a life dream that's ticked off. I didn't play many games, but that didn't matter. As soon as I pulled that shirt on for the first time and went on the pitch for my hometown club, that was big for me.
Well, you put yourself into Leicester's history, obviously scoring the final goal at Filbert Street. How did that feel as being a local lad and obviously going to games there?
Yeah, so I used to sit in the double decker. You're too young to have been ever have gone to Filbert Street, I think, but the old ground was called Filbert Street, and that's where I used to go when I was a kid. From when I was about 6 years old, I used to go and sit in the double decker stand and watch, all the players, Julian Joachim, Emil Heskett, all sort of my heroes at the time. And that stadium stood for over 100 years. So the fact that I scored that last goal was huge to me. It was a bit of a blur at the time because I don't think I ever scored a header in my whole time throughout, all the youth teams at Leicester. And did you know it was a header?
No, I just thought it was a normal goal.
No, it was a header. So it was a header, and because I didn't used to like heading the ball because I was, I used to do this. When I jump up to head the ball, I'd do this, and I'd never head the ball. But the ball came across and I dived for it. And I think it was just one of them things where it felt like it was just meant to be. Because before that game, I was having an argument with the manager. Building up to that game, I was having an argument for the manager because I was playing in the Premier League on about 375 quid a week. And I'd been playing well. So I was asking for a new contract, but he was sort of saying, well, you've not even scored a goal yet. He said, you've played well, but you've not scored a goal yet. So I really wanted in that last game, because it was the last game of the season as well, I really wanted to try and score a goal. So, yeah, it was just a wicked feeling. There's nothing like it on the planet that I could say has made me ever feel the same. You know my oldest son, don't you, Brandon?
Yeah.
People talk about their kids and when their kids are born, and that is a unique, special feeling, but it's not the same sort of feeling as scoring a goal. It's sort of a euphoric feeling. So to be able to do that and, you know, be the last guy that did that at the old ground was really special.
Is that adrenaline of scoring? We see celebrations in the Premier League and in other leagues. So the adrenaline, you know, the celebration.
Yeah, my celebration was weird actually. After this interview, you should go on YouTube and have a look, because it's weird, because I point up in the stadium, and everyone said to me, "What were you pointing at?" And I was pointing at my dad, my old man, and it wasn't a loving point. I weren't pointing to say, "Oh, I've scored in the Premier League." I pointed to him to say, basically, don't ever tell me that I can't do something. Because when I was growing up, he told me I was never going to make it, because he thought I was, you know, I didn't have the right type of personality. So that point was to say to him, don't ever tell me that I can't do something. So yeah, but I just went nuts. I jumped in the crowd and high-fived all the crowd, and then run around the pitch for 20 minutes. No, it was a good feeling, mate. It was good.
You talk about your dad being an influence in your life. In your book, Mount Piper After Darkness, you go on and explain that. How big of an influence was he?
No, it was huge. I mean, he doesn't parent the way that I parent now. He's a lot more tougher than I was, and you know, I think it's good when you get older, because you sit him down and you talk to him and you go through things. But there were periods of my life where I didn't talk to him or see him for long periods. You know, he's quite, you know, what he said now is that his upbringing was a lot different to my upbringing. So all he knows, you know, how to parent is the way that he got parented. And, you know, he had quite a difficult life growing up in the West Indies and not seeing his own dad, and then coming to London and then getting slapped about by his stepdad and stuff like that. He had a tough upbringing. And those characteristics that he learned while he was growing up sort of passed over to him. So I had the same sort of thing in the house, you know, get whacked about a bit if you're messing about, and then, you know, bits and bobs that weren't good, really. And I've told him that now. I'm a big man, so I can stand in front of him and tell him that weren't right. And I think he's learned things from me over the years, how he possibly could have been a better dad when he was growing up. But listen, he supported me with my football. He kept a roof over our head. He put food in our mouth. So, you know, and me and him are very good now. We've got a good relationship now.
Well, that's just the thing that you brought up, saying, like, for your dad's example, and your dad's hitting you. That's all you know. That's all you're going to teach your kids, your sons in this case.
Yeah, and you know, that's why, you know, I try my hardest every day, because it's the most important job in the world, right? To be a parent. So I try my hardest every day to be the shining example to my 3 boys and my stepdaughter of how to treat other people, how to treat my wife, how to treat family and friends and strangers. And, you know, that's the way I live my life now. And, you know, hopefully, well, Brandon's 19 now, Sienna's 17, Finley's 17, and Cairo's 14. So, and they're all good kids. So I think I'm doing something right.
Yeah, you released your book August 2020. What was the reason to releasing it?
So the book, that was a strange story as well. Have you heard of the football magazine 442?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 442, a guy that is one of the editors at 442 is a big Leicester fan, and I didn't know. And he messaged me on my phone one day and he said, will you do an interview for 442? So I said, yeah, sound. So I went and met him and I did this interview, and I was really open and honest. And I told him about my struggles with drugs and addiction and alcohol. And, you know, I spoke about that stuff along with the football. But when the article came out in 442, it was one of the best read articles of 2019. And I was thinking, why is that? Because I'm not a big name in football at all. I didn't play many games. So I rang him and I said, why is it one of the best read articles? And he said, just because of how honest it was and how things can go terribly wrong for someone that other people look at and think they've got it all, making it a professional football, money, cars, houses, and yet it can still go wrong. So when I was shocked by that, he then said to me, I've always wanted to write a book and I'd be interested to dig deeper into that story. So if you're willing for me to write your book, and I said, mate, no one's going to buy that book. I just thought no one would buy the book because I'm not a big name in football, as I say. But he persuaded me. We did it, and I'm really proud of that book because it was just everything that I went through. I just put it all in the book. So there's some really dark things in there as well, and there's hardly any football in there. It's not like one of the normal football autobiographies you read. I ran down the wing, I crossed it in, I scored this goal, I did that. It's not that. It's the real life happenings of what goes on behind the scenes, what goes on with agents, what goes on in my case with the drugs and the addiction, and some of the terrible stuff that I went through.
Well, you see that though. I think it's what makes the book so intriguing and interesting because, like you said, you see a footballer making it, all the houses, money, and everything, but you don't see the dark side of, in your case, drugs and alcohol. And it's really intriguing to see someone dive into that.
Yeah, I think it's important because even me, when I was growing up, I think, and don't get me wrong, football was the best job in the world for me. A kid that loves football, loves talking about it, loves playing it, loves watching it. It's the best job in the world if you can make it. And I think from the outside looking in, everyone thinks, everything's perfect. And that's not the case a lot of the time. And especially if your career finishes earlier, like what happens to me. Imagine getting your dream job, you have it for 6 years, and then it's taken away from you. It's quite difficult then to sort of integrate back into like a normal kind of life. So instead of, struggling with that and finding different ways how to make that happen, I decided that getting drunk every day and taking drugs was a good way to go, which was obviously a stupid idea. But yeah, that's the truth of it.
With the problems with drugs and alcohol would obviously lead to your injury concerns, which most of your career you were injured.
Say that again, Jay. Sorry, mate.
Like the drugs and alcohol part of it, was that due to being injured so often?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the family growing up, there was a few cases of, depression and, some mental health issues and stuff like that. But I wasn't affected by it at all when I was growing up. And then the first time I really, looking back now, the first time I became depressed, I think was probably, the third or fourth injury that I had. So I struggled with it while I was a professional footballer. But I didn't drink or take drugs then. I was, an A1 kind of athlete. I stayed on the straight and narrow. I worked in the gym every day. I worked hard. I was careful what I ate. Didn't take too many toxins into my body. But when football's over and you start feeling depressed and a little down, you go and have a drink and everything seems a little bit brighter, which is clearly not the case, because then the next day you feel even worse when you've been drinking the night before. So then you do it again and again and again. It becomes a vicious circle, and that's sort of how that happened for me.
You obviously starting SSD Academy in 2017. How does that feel, giving kids the same opportunity that you would have wanted when you were younger?
Yeah, FSD is, other than my family, and I love the commentary as well. I love working in the media and being a broadcaster, but FSD is like my huge passion. Because as I said, when I grew up and I had a broken home and my dad wasn't around all the time, and I was always on the streets out in Leicester, and luckily I had football to give me a pathway out, but I was getting into trouble at school. I didn't have many male role models in my life, through certain periods. And I know the importance of having a male role model, especially for a young, kid that's got a broken home. So, there was always that thought of, when I come out of football and I want to step into a new career, it has to be something that involves, helping youngsters to try and find a pathway in life. And most of the time, we've got 2 academies now, but most of the time I work at the Inner City Academy, which is generally kids that I think need a little more guidance and support from someone like myself and the staff that I surround them with. And football is just because I know football, I love football, so I use football as the carrot to be able to interact with these kids, and then we give them life skills and education and try and use that positivity to set them up on pathways to go and have, a successful life, not just in football, in sport, in work, in careers, and in life really, and give them those tools that I think young people need to progress.
How do you find that, coaching younger lads and giving them obviously the same opportunity, and with your experiences in football?
How do I find it?
Yeah, like giving younger lads like the coaching and been able to pass on your knowledge and experience of playing at the top level.
Yeah, I mean, I love it, mate. It is my favorite thing to do. I don't actually coach that much anymore, believe it or not. I'm sort of the guy that, steps in if I see an issue or a problem, or if I can try and help someone. I talk a lot about mental health down at the academy and help some kids that are struggling through that, because I've got a lived experience of it. And then I surround them with people that love to coach and, love to help youngsters develop on the pitch. I'm more off the pitch. I enjoy making sure they're staying up to date with their education and getting the best out of that, what they can do, setting up the workshops for the enrichment of the different things that we can offer, and trying to help them find a pathway to something that they're going to love, because it's a really difficult age. 16 to 19, I think, is a really difficult age, because if I didn't have football, I wouldn't have had a clue what I wanted to do. And I tell these kids all the time, you're really lucky if you finish school and you 100% know in your head what your pathway is and what you want to do, because then that period of time becomes very easy. It's hard work if you want to be successful, but it's easy because you know what you want to do. And most kids, from what I see nowadays, when they finish school, they're not 100% behind something of what they want to do. So the academy is about spending that time with us and trying to find that pathway of what you do want to do, so it gives you a more tunnel vision to be able to go and achieve it.
Talk about a pathway after school or college. What, if you wasn't a footballer, what do you think you would have been doing in those years?
Wow, that's a question I often ask myself, mate, and I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea, because I wasn't bright at school. I messed around throughout all my schooling life, really, other than if it was football, PE. But I think eventually I would have found a job where I'm helping others. I think that's important to me. If I'm helping others, I'm feeling good. And if I'm feeling good and got peace of mind, that's when I'm at my happiest in life. So it would have had to be something that involved helping others, definitely.
Obviously, you talk about commentating for BBC Radio Leicester. What's your thoughts on the current state of Leicester?
Ooh, wow. We're in a bit of a predicament at the minute, I think. I think it was the right decision to let Brendan Rodgers go. I think the club probably should have acted sooner. There was people like me, and I know there was other fans that felt when we weren't picking up any results at the start of the season, that was probably the time to make a change. But the club stayed with him. He started winning a few games, but then it sort of went back to the same sort of period again where we couldn't really buy a win. And it wasn't really so much for me just based on the results. It was based on how Brendan started to talk in the media about his players, about the fans, about the fact that he's not got any, funds. And he's got all the same players there that he won the FA Cup with and finished, fifth, eighth. So, yeah, I think the club could have acted a little bit sooner, but we're in the situation we're in now. I think Dean Smith coming in is a good idea with Craig Shakespeare and John Terry. I think it's gave it a bounce. Vardy's scored again the other night, so that's a big bonus. And it's going to be nail-biting till the end of the season. Normally, I'm really positive, and I'd say, listen, Leicester are going to stay up easy, but I don't think we can talk like that in the minute. I think it's going to be really difficult. Our goal difference is good. That's a bonus. That's like having an extra point. So I think Monday's game is massive against Everton. If we can beat Everton on Monday, I think we'll stay up.
Our running is very favourable too, playing most of the teams around us, Everton and West Ham, and having Fulham and Liverpool at home. Well, one at home and one away.
Yeah. The other good thing is a lot of the teams around us have got tough run-ins. We've got a few top teams. I think Newcastle are in there. I think Fulham are still in there as well for Leicester. But some of the other teams have got sort of top 6, top 8 sides. So I think they're going to really struggle to pick any points up. But, last night I watched the football. West Ham nearly got something from the Liverpool game. Nottingham Forest won, which was a bit of a disaster for us. So we've dropped back into the relegation zone now. So it's going to be really tight. But if we win Monday, I do think we'll stay up.
It just seemed like Forest couldn't buy a win. And then once we got 4 points on the board, they just somehow was able to perform like that against a good Brighton side.
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised. I thought Brighton was going to go there and smash Forest. And it didn't turn out like that. And listen, that's why we all love football. Unless you're Man City at the minute, anyone can sort of beat anyone. Leicester's strange, because since the World Cup, generally we've seen really terrible performances and losses. And then sandwiched in the middle of that, you've got an unbelievable performance against Aston Villa, who were doing really well at that point, and we smashed them. And then you go and smash Tottenham as well, and then it goes back to the terrible results again. It's quite strange, actually, how it's played out. But I'm just hoping we do stay up in the Premier League, because Leicester, the city of Leicester, without Leicester City in the Premier League, is not worth thinking about. I mean, the amount of investment into the city that will be lost, and it will be a disaster. So not just for football reasons, I think for life reasons as well, it's important that Leicester City stay in the Premier League.
Well, talking about football reasons, financially it would ruin us selling someone like James Maddison for like 30, 20 million when he's clearly worth 60, 70.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, even if we do stay up this season, it's going to be a real difficult season next season, I think. News came out today that Soyuncu has already pre-signed his contract with Atletico Madrid. So there's a 30, 40 million pound player that is going to be leaving for nothing because his contract runs out. There's another 7 to 8 guys at the football club whose contracts are running out this summer, so they'll leave for nothing. We'll have to sell James Maddison to be able to, reinvest in the squad. Harvey Barnes might go. Jamie Vardy's getting older. So all of a sudden, it's one of the biggest rebuilds you're ever going to see in Premier League history, I think, because we got to, more or less buy a whole new team with hardly any funds. And that's going to be really difficult.
One of those players contracts expiring this year, Tielemans. It's been a heartbeat of the Leicester team since 2018.
Yeah, he's going to be a huge miss. There's lots of important players going. You see how important Soyuncu is. That's why it makes it crazier that the last manager, was not putting him anywhere near the team because he's a brilliant defender. So, he's going to go. Tielemans, Maddison, maybe Barnes. And then there's them guys that come in and do important jobs. They're not such mainstays in the team, but the spine of the team will be gone. So it's going to be really difficult to try and rebuild that.
There was a room last summer with Schmeichel leaving like 2 million or whatever it was, and Fofana a big bust up and losing him for 60.
Yeah, listen, I was one of the ones that said I wouldn't mind if Schmeichel moved on, but I was saying that before Pope went to Newcastle, because I thought at 10 million, that's a really good deal. And if you're going to let someone like Schmeichel go, you've got to replace him with someone of, equal standing and quality, I think. So I thought if the club let Schmeichel go but bring Pope in, I mean, look how well Pope's getting on at Newcastle. It's because he's a top keeper. If something like that was going to happen, I think it was the right move. But if you're going to let Schmeichel go and then you're not going to invest in another goalkeeper and you're going to use Danny Ward, in hindsight, I think he was always going to struggle.
Also, that leadership you lose with someone like Kasper Schmeichel, we haven't really replaced it, like you said. And Johnny Evans being injured for most of the season. We don't have that coach, as Brendan Rodgers explained, in the back four.
Yeah, Brendan Rodgers got a little bit unlucky with injuries. I mean, throughout his time with us, I don't know if it's the way that he coaches the team, but we had lots and lots of injuries to key players as well. When Ndidi was at the top of his game, he came out the side for 3-4 months because he was injured. Johnny Evans, as you say, Jamie Vardy at one point. So he did get a little bit unlucky with injury, but that happens as a football club, and you've got to deal with it. But yeah, Johnny Evans, I think he's got another year left, but obviously he's getting older as well. And I think these injuries for Johnny Evans just keep coming and coming. And unfortunately, as you get older, that's what seems to happen to certain players. You're out for a long layoff, you come back, and then you get another injury somewhere else in the body. It's happening with Ricardo Pereira as well, as he's getting a little older. So it's really difficult. And as I say, I think it's going to be a real interesting summer. If we stay up, it'll be really interesting to see what the starting 11 is next season.
So unfortunate with Ricardo, like you said, one of the best players in the 1920 season, and maybe one of the best right backs in the world too.
Yeah, I started saying it really early. I didn't see him. I think I only seen him 10 or so appearances, and I started saying, listen, this guy is going to be one of the top right backs in world football, and especially in the Premier League. And for a season and a half, when he wasn't suffering with the injuries, I think he was. I think he got to that level where he can attack, he can defend, great on the ball, really got good knowledge about the game. So, listen, Jay, all the best players seem to get injured, and I consider myself one of them.
With Harvey Barnes too. When we were pushing for top four in the FA Cup winning season, was one of our best players, then got injured.
Yeah, it knocks everyone. I mean, injuries are part of the game, so it's going to happen. There's only very few players that sort of go through a career without, being out with injury that often. And as I always used to say, I always used to come back a better player, believe it or not. And that's the advice that I sent it to Ricardo in a tweet. People think when you're injured, so you're not on the grass and you're not playing the game, you can't, that's it, development stops. That's not the case. Once I got injured, I used to watch YouTube videos of people that played my position, and always constantly tried to keep learning, because that's important for your mind. So if you just switch off about football once you're injured, it's going to be a real hard recovery, and it's going to be a long recovery. But if you're injured, but you can still try and develop in some way, whether it's your mindset, whether it's the your nutritional knowledge, so you're putting healthier things in your body, watching people who play your position. There's lots of different ways you can still develop and become a better footballer, even though you're not playing football. And that's my philosophy in life. So if I can't do something for a period of time, I'm still going to try and develop in some other ways so that I'm better at the thing that I want to do when I get back to be able to do it.
I used to talk about the mindset. It's also a chance for players to work on their mental health and get rid of any distractions that they've got in their personal life, but then work nowadays with a sports psychologist and work on that aspect too.
Yeah, really important. I mean, there was no sports psychologist really around football or at football clubs when I was playing, but I think clubs are getting more wise to it now. I think they do understand that players need that support as well. It's well used in other sports. Rugby was a huge one when they went and won the World Cup. I know they accessed a lot of sports psychologists, and it's important for all sports to do it because it's difficult sport. Listen, you're not going to war or being a soldier and having those kind of difficulties. I understand the difference, because sometimes when you talk about, oh, poor lad, he started to struggle when he was playing football, and a lot of people, when I've spoke like that before, have related it to, but it's not like going to Afghanistan and losing a limb or fighting against people with guns and tanks. And I understand that it's not the same, but it's all relative. And in the football world, the pressure, the media, especially the social media side of things now, and the abuse that some players get is really difficult to try and deal with, especially for different kinds of personalities. So to be able to have some support with dealing with that is important, I think.
Especially the pressure now with football, with the stakes being so high. Like we said, Leicester getting relegated will cripple the club financially and the city.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really would. I mean, not many people are talking about that, about crippling the city, but I think it would, especially because we're going through such a tough period for everyone. Imagine the lack of investment then coming into small businesses, the sponsorship deals that come into the city because Leicester City are in the Premier League, and vice versa. So it will have a knock-on effect for everyone, even those people that don't like football. If Leicester hasn't got a Premier League team, it isn't, such a vibrant place to be and come. And so, yeah, I'm hoping they can stay up for the football, of course, and for the fans, but also for the city.
How do you see the running going then, Matt, with the final 5 odd games left of the season? How do you think Leicester will fare in them?
I think Monday's massive. If we win Monday, I think we might hit a little bit of momentum, because Dean Smith, since he's come in, you got Man City, so you got to call that one a write-off. I don't think even the most optimistic of Leicester fans thought we were going to get anything out of that game, really. But the positive that I took from that game is that we won the second half. We didn't concede, and Iheanacho scored. We took that positivity into the next game and beat Wolves, who were playing well at the minute, so that was important. And then we go down against Leeds, but we come back late. And the fact that Vardy scored, I think he's going to be huge, because I think it will revitalise him for this last part of the season. And I think you'll see him start against Everton because of that goal. And if we beat Everton, I can see us winning another 2 games after that. I don't know which ones they'll be, but I just think we'll gain a little bit of momentum. And I think 35 points for the last 10 years has kept teams in the Premier League. So everyone says the 40-point mark, but the mark that's important from the last 10 years is 35 points. We're currently on 29. We'll go to 32 if we beat Everton. So I think we'll need one more win after Everton, but I think we'll get 2, so I think we'll stay up.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time, Matt. I've got no more questions for you, so thank you for that.
Anytime, buddy. Thanks for having me on, mate.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.
Take care, Jake.